Howdy, the kickboxing historian here. I'll be making videos every couple of weeks into the foreseeable future, often on historical topics, but also on culture or pop cultural issues. Today I'm going to talk about a slang term mentioned on dictionary.com and making the rounds of the internet as a trending hashtag, covidiot. You may wonder what a historian has to say about a term currently trending on Twitter and Instagram, but the answer is that as a historian I spend a lot of time studying cultural theory useful for understanding the world as it is. Being a historian is about more than just knowing a succession of so-called facts. It's about knowing why these things matter, why people think about things as they do, and why the world is the way it is, and why any of that matters. And I can't just turn that on and off, trust me. When I'm lying awake at night, I wish I could sometimes, but that just doesn't work that way. So it's only natural that I reach for these cultural theories when I read about people using a brand new word such as covidiot. You've probably come across the term covidiot yourself. It seems like it's everywhere, but the most likely place for you to have encountered it is in a story about a Kentucky woman who cut a hole in her face mask to make it easier to breathe while shopping. After all, this story and an accompanying video has been shared widely in the New York Post, Britain's Daily Mail, and even on the website India.com. As a story, it's a perfect candidate for going viral, but it also demonstrates why both the term covidiot and the way of thinking it represents are deeply problematic. Let's consider why this story is so perfect for our viral, in more ways than one, age. It includes a short video made by a store clerk showing the woman with her modified mask and the clerk making fun of her without her being able to recognize his ridicule. This is perfect internet fodder, as it allows people to look at her in the exchange she has with the clerk and think, well, I may not be perfect, but I'm smarter and better than her. Peter Coffin has a great video about the way our society manufactures and uses outrage that's worth checking out, so I'll link it below, showing that this is much of the appeal of reality TV, memes, and many other common elements in our society. Thus, we're provided with a target for our fear and loathing, allowing us a smug sense of self-satisfaction at others' expense. I would argue that this element of looking for targets for our scorn is even more important during the public health crisis we're all facing. I recently read Martha C. Nussbaum's Monarchy of Fear. The central insight of the book is that while we are all wired for fear, it's an often self-defeating impulse that can be used and manipulated by societal elites for their own purposes. As I make this video, there have been over 100,000 confirmed deaths due to COVID-19 in the United States. Americans are on edge and fearful with good reason. Fearful about their own health and that of their friends and loved ones, about economic concerns, and even just the uncertainty of when life can return to normal. Not being able to go to the gym or a hair salon may seem like small things to worry about, but the inability to do these sorts of things is symbolic of the ways the pandemic is negatively affecting our lives and making us fearful. It's only natural that societal elites and tastemakers will manipulate this fear for their own ends. The president attempts to direct this fear toward the Chinese and the WHO in order to shift blame for the state of the country away from his administration. Alex Jones uses fear of the coronavirus to sell products, claiming to boost the immune system while also seeking to shore up his political relevancy. And Rush Limbaugh seeks to hold on to his sense of self-importance and wealth by telling his listeners that the pandemic is a hoax, and so on into near infinity. So many are using fear of the coronavirus for their own purposes, it would take a book rather than a short YouTube video to even scratch the surface of this phenomenon. To be fair, Democrats and liberals are doing this as well. Their intended goal may be to save lives, but this means they have to increase their political power as well, so there's obviously an element of self-interest in all discussions of the impact of the pandemic. What often gets missed in the name-calling ensuing from all this mess is that the underlying assumptions are flawed, though. We end up blaming those who refuse to practice self-isolation for being too stupid to know better, causing the hashtag covidiots to blow up on Twitter. We ridicule those who bring military-style ordnance to protest social distancing measures as, quote, gun-toting idiots. And many particularly enjoy the opportunity to make fun of a Kentucky woman for failing to understand how a mask works, because in our society, targets of ridicule are all the more convenient if they speak with a southern accent or use non-standard English. It's understandable why these individuals are blamed and draw ridicule in our society, for personal responsibility and free will are cornerstones upon which our culture is built. Therefore, when a person does something that seems to make no sense, that individual gets blamed for their actions. However, we should think about why those who attack the idea of wearing masks in public, who reject social distancing guidelines, or who bring guns to protest stay-at-home orders think the way they do. It's highly unlikely they came up with these ideas on their own. Instead, there's a barrage of information sources telling them to reject the, quote, official story about the pandemic. These sources include Fox News, which claims to be an alternative to the mainstream media while actually being the most popular news station in the U.S., where until recently, viewers could watch talking heads such as Sean Hannity tell his viewers that the pandemic is a hoax at any time of the day or night. For those who don't think Fox is enough of an alternative to the, quote, mainstream media, there's Alex Jones' InfoWars website, where it's easy to find content like the video posted on May the 18th made by a woman claiming to be a nurse who asserts that not only are masks ineffective, but they are actually dangerous to wear. Even the President of the United States has called the pandemic a hoax, before later moving on to use it as an opportunity to promote various unproven remedies. What all of these sources have in common is a motivation to spread misinformation about the pandemic, whether that motivation is a desire to get rich, be elected, or simply to hold on to relevance. Sadly, in spite of the potentially democratizing elements of the internet, we don't all have equal access to information or the tools to process that information equally well. That's not because some of us are smart and others stupid. Rather, it's because those with economic and political power have a greater capacity to be heard and listened to, and it's their ideas that are more likely to gain acceptance in our society. This is true for all sorts of reasons, from the way the ideas of the wealthy elite are embedded in movies, television, and advertising, and presented as simply the way things are, to the decades-long campaign by political elites to subvert the authority of experts who might contradict cherry-picked and non-evidence-based arguments. Tom Nichols published an excellent study of this effort to undermine the authority of experts and credible sources of information in his 2017 book, The Death of Expertise. Given all the power aligned against the average person, it's small wonder that so many people come to accept a view of the world lacking any cohesive support as not only rational, but more rational than accepting what the common quote-unquote sheeple believe, to borrow a term Rush Limbaugh has popularized for those who accept an evidence-based view of the world. In the case of our current pandemic, many find it useful to put this evidence-based narrative of the danger the virus represents into doubt. Owners of casinos want people to get back to gambling, the oil companies want people driving and traveling again, and in a million other ways the economic elite want people getting out and spending money rather than self-isolating in their homes. Sure, some companies profited from lockdown orders, but most did not. Though there are undoubtedly economic costs to reopening too soon and without proper safeguards in place. Furthermore, beyond the current crisis, it's politically useful to keep society atomized into individuals and small groups who are angry at one another. Liberals hate conservatives and vice versa. Those who reject the idea of human-caused climate change sneer at those who believe the science, and everyone feels good about demeaning those reality shows present to us as having made bad personal decisions. If we weren't so atomized, people might join together and demand real changes to society so that people are prioritized over corporations. None of this is meant to let those who flout social distancing guidelines or otherwise reject the scientific evidence about the coronavirus pandemic off the hook. What they are doing harms society, puts lives at risk, and threatens us all. We should challenge their views, and we should insist on rational, evidence-based political solutions to our current crisis. We should penalize their actions when those actions represent a great enough potential for harm. However, it helps us neither at the individual nor societal level to use personal attacks against those who have been swayed by misinformation and the attitudes of those with whom they associate to accept false claims. While it goes against the American view of individualism and individual responsibility, at a fundamental level, those protesting stay-at-home orders and regurgitating arguments that fears of the pandemic are overblown or an outright hoax aren't personally at fault for their beliefs. We need to be mindful that such people are victims of a vast misinformation machine. Not only might it reduce the tension inherent in personal interactions, but perhaps by interacting humanely rather than angrily, minds might be changed and society might function just a little better.